Hi, this is Sandra Holsworth, and I'm a 26-year liver transplant recipient, and I'm the co-lead patient partner on the Canadian Donation Transplant Research Program, Theme 5. And tonight I'm hosting our special interview with Toby and Bernie Boulet, the parents of Logan Boulet, who we all know and heard about. And they're here tonight to talk to us about the Green Shirt Day and other initiatives that they've been involved with. So let's welcome Toby and Bernie.
Hi, thanks for having us. We're glad to be here tonight.
Thanks, Sandra. Nice to see you again. Last time I was in Banff, but it's nice to have you in a conversation.
Nice to see you again as well. And so many of us have heard about Green Shirt Day. It was an initiative that came out, unfortunately, of the Humboldt bus crash, where unfortunately Logan's life passed. But the impact that it was made with Logan becoming an organ donor has been something that I have never seen in the time that I've been part of the organ and tissue donation community, which has actually been close to 30 years. So known as the Logan Boulet effect, and now we have Green Shirt Day. Tell us about, give us an overview of the mission and what the idea was with Green Shirt Day.
We were contacted by David Peckham from Vancouver for Green Shirt Day. He had an idea, and he'd already purchased the rights to the Green Shirt Day. Doesn't own Orange Shirt Day, of course, or Pink Shirt Day, but it was along the same lines. He's a lifetime marketing agent for BC Transplant, and he got out on his own, and he supports organ transplant. That's what he does. And so he purchased Green Shirt Day. He gave us a phone call, and we just said to him, "That's nice. Can you go away?" And he didn't go away. So we asked a bunch of questions of our friends, and then our friends gave us answers that we told them these are we have to have, and then we've come up with the mission. The mission basically is as simple as this: is that we're here. The Boulets are here to advocate for organ transplant, organ and tissue transplant, and organ donor tissue awareness in North America, mostly Canada. Though we'll go anywhere you want us to go.
That's great. So being involved with the Canadian Transplant Association, familiar with David and the work that he had done. So it was good that you lined up with somebody that had a reputable, position and had a good place in marketing, because he did do amazing work as well. And so now Green Shirt Day that we did sort of try to do in Ontario and that, and also across Canada, was very limited in the amount of awareness that we received. However, thanks to the Boulet families sharing Logan's story and putting their name towards it, it has gone it's just had such a major impact. So this year we're coming up to the 5th anniversary. Do you have anything special planned, or what kind of activities are happening in your area there in Alberta? And have you made any other plans for across Canada?
Well, there's Light Up Green Canada, the Light Up Your Porch Canada, Join the Movement Canada. There's stuff going all over across the country, and we don't find out of a lot of it because we use Green Shirt Day as a grassroots. We call it grassroots. It's organized, but it's like, what do you want to do? We have transplant recipients in Canadian Transplant Association all over the country that they don't want to speak out loud, but they'll certainly light up their porch green. They'll organize a small barbecue in their neighborhood. They'll have a luncheon. They'll do this, they'll do that. And we're going to Newfoundland this summer, Sandra, for a 10-day holiday with some friends.
Nice.
And I was just checking things out, and there's 10 to 15 little small towns and small towns that that officially their mayor proclaimed last year's Green Shirt Day. Well, we don't know that. We don't know any of those things. But we do know that the city of Ottawa has proclaimed, because we got the letter in the mail. We do know that Nova Scotia's proclaimed Nova Scotia's as Green Shirt Day. We also, Ontario is now officially, as of last year, in perpetuity. April 7th is a provincial day. It's a day. It's a recognized.
Yeah.
And we have our certificate. Our certificate came in the mail today that this will be the very first one. It's cool. So it goes across the country. But what's actually planned? I tell you, during COVID, things really slowed right down because people that were immunocompromised, they couldn't go outside, they couldn't do things, so they didn't really organize things. But we've been going out more, we've been lots of Zoom meetings, but now we've been going more public appearances, which is, we don't mind any of that. And that's fun because you get to go and meet people. We're in London, Ontario this last fall, right? We're
Oh,
going
you
back
were
to
there
the-
for the art exhibit.
Yeah.
We were for the
Yeah.
art. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the art gala. It was really fun.
And you know, Mark
And you
Miles.
would you? Yeah, I know Mark Miles from Manitoba. Did you get a chance to meet Dr. Wall out in London?
No, because you know what? He
He's
wasn't
retired.
there. He was actually in Buenos Aires at the Transplant conference down there. So he's down presenting there, which was too bad because I've only got to meet Dr. Wall via Zoom and that way. And so it would have been awesome to be able to actually have met him. But yeah, he was down in Buenos Aires at the time, so we missed him. I think he left just before we got there, like a day or so before we got there, and he came back. He came home like a couple days after. So
So there's lots going on.
So as a segue, let's continue on that because when I attended one of the CDTRP meetings and it was part of our PFD, patient family donor platform, there was a whole thing on education, and I was so happy to see you there, and also Dr. Wall. So I mean, Dr. Wall is a legend here, and not only in a legend in Ontario, but he's a legend worldwide. He also was the surgeon that gave a liver transplant to my friend who celebrates 40 years this year, Heather Fisher, and she was the president of the CTA at one time, and my unofficial mentee when I went to my first transplant games. But with that being said, so you were familiar with the One Life Many Gifts that we have here in Ontario and our high school outreach, but you were interested in doing stuff within your education system and also within the grade school. Tell us about that.
So on the very first Green Shirt Day event that was coming up, we were very fortunate at our school that our principal was supporting us to have an assembly. So then we really, another teacher and I were spearheading it, and we looked and looked and looked and searched where on the internet, because that's where we go to. And there was almost zero resources that were made for primary school children. So my school goes from kindergarten to grade 5. And we're trying to find anything that we could find that would bring the idea of organ transplantation, organ donation, organs to their level without it being too scientific, without it being beyond them. And we found very little for like books, like stories that we could read to kids. And that was really hard. And then I kind of stumbled across Organites, which came out of the UK. And Royden, who is the creator of them, had done a really good job of creating these little cute cartoon organs, telling stories about what they do, what their purpose is, why they are important. And they were able to explain that to primary school kids. So we used ideas from them, and we used some of their little videos that they had, because that was about all we could find that was really at like a primary level, because I teach grade 2, and so the kids that were putting on the assembly were grade 2 age. So how could you have them do an assembly when they don't have any background? So that was what started that. And then I talked to Jenny Ryan at Canadian Blood Services and Peggy Johns, sorry. And we were talking about that, and Jenny mostly went out and researched the Organites and has since made a connection with Royden and works with them. And now we have Organites.ca, which is resources that are created for Canadian kids. And I got asked today after our assembly, like, are those available for everybody? And yeah, like, they're great resources for families and teachers and, you know, whatever levels that you want to talk about, organs for kids at a primary level. And they've actually created a whole bunch of resources. So that's awesome.
It's an excellent program, and it takes me back to like around 2000 when I worked with a donor family here in Ontario, and they were involved in education as well. And so I shared with you the curriculum we put together. It was for grade 5,
Yeah.
and it was done with Classroom Connections. But it was amazing because there's another woman that Sherry Logan, who you might know, whose daughter had a liver transplant, and she's very active with our patient family donor. And she was really trying to get in the schools and stuff. And her and I have been to a couple schools where we talked, and little Ashley was with us. Now, little Ashley's 16, but back then she was like 8 years old. And I remember being in a grade school, and it would have like kindergarten to grade 8. So the young kids would be at the front and at the back. And the questions were coming from the first part of the room. And the questions that came were just like, wow, like these kids get it. And so the before, when we were putting together curriculum, it was always like geared towards grade 11 and grade 12. And it's like, kids in grade 5 understand it because they're learning. I mean, what kids learn in grade 5 now compared to when I was in grade 5. But like even at the younger age, so it's amazing. And what I love about it is the fact that they're learning it at school. And what do? They go home and they talk to their parents about it. And it sort of goes back to the other term, I think, Toby, that I remember seeing an article, and I used to talk about it too. We used to have a saying called talk, tell all living kin within the CTA. But you phrased the kitchen table talk, or wherever it might be. It might be in the backyard, or yeah. And that's really changed as well, right? So tell us about the importance of, not only registering, but the other part that we need to do.
We, from the very beginning, Bernie advocated it, and then I got more on board. I'll say that, and I'm on board 100%. It's all about the conversation. You can talk about everything you want, but unless the person has that conversation that they're going to register to be an organ donor, or they tell their family, it doesn't matter. Because in Logan's situation, he was in a different province. Again, it's an organ recovery province. And if we had been in Alberta and not gone to those couple of games we've got to watch, they would never have known Logan was a registered organ donor. And then even we're there, they're still, which Bernie and I both have difficulty understanding, there's still families that say, oh, no, just because my child or my father or my cousin or whoever is in front of them wanted to be registered to be an organ donor, we don't want that. So you have to have that conversation to let your family know that, yes, I do want to be an organ donor, and yes, I am registered, or I will be. In Logan's case, he told us he would be registering on his birthday, which he did. It's so important, because that conversation, and then that conversation we've heard many times, many people, that it spurs 4 more. If I tell you, Sandra, that I'm a registered organ donor, well, then you're going to tell Bernie, and you're going to tell Stephanie, and you're going to tell your next door neighbor. You're going to tell 3 or 4 other people, and away it goes. It just spreads like wildfire. So that's the important part. That's what we see.
So I think like today at our school, we had our Green Shirt Day assembly ahead of our Green Shirt Day at school will be on Thursday, but we gave the kids a little bit of background information by having this assembly. So our grade 2s, and then one of the classes is a 1-2. So there was about 9 little grade 1s that were part of the assembly, and they presented this assembly so that the kids could, the rest of the students at the school had some background before they were wearing shirts, although many of them have got to see the assembly last year as well. And then we had COVID before that. And then we had one assembly, which most of the kids weren't even at the school then. But just our big goal is for kids to have a conversation, to take what happened today, to take it home and have a conversation with their family. Just because we know that when kids bring home a conversation, it's just so innocent and like, hey, we did this and we talked about this at school today. Or I learned about Logan Boulet, and that's what our goal really is, that we want to do with our assembly, is to just spark that conversation. Jenny Ryan from Canadian Blood Services sent us organ squishies. So they're stress balls that are organs, right? Yep. And so we gave the last of ours away today to the kids, and taking that home too. Like, just take that home. Here's I got a heart. It looks like a real heart. And for them to just have a conversation about, hey, did you know that a heart does this, or lungs do this? And that's what we want, is just to have that conversation, and hoping that, it feels more comfortable for families to know, hey, we can talk about organ donation. And because for the kids, as adults, we know that if someone's going to donate a heart or lungs, it means that they are going to be an angel donor, that they are not surviving. But kids don't necessarily know that. They just said, yeah, it's like that's the right thing to do. And so that's what's really important, is just having that conversation. And so we talked about that with my own students in my class today as they were leaving home. Like, go home and tell your family about the assembly today and what it was all about. So
that's amazing. So you definitely had a major impact. You definitely have done that. So I did hear recently that you've gotten involved with the Alberta Transplant Institute. So CDTRP being involved in research, we really feel that the patient family and donor families, well, patient families, which include our donor families, and organ donors can have an impact by sharing their experience, so their lived experience, and giving input into certain research that's happening. So tell us about your experience to date, and do you see yourselves being involved or having an impact there?
All I can say is we were like paddling hard to stay above the water. It was really interesting. And
It's not done yet. That's the problem.
No.
It's not done. It's supposed to be done. It's not done.
And
Details keep coming.
but it was interesting in the fact because it was coming at the whole donor family experience from a different perspective, and the research perspective as opposed to just the stories perspective. And we understand fully that as we continue along this journey as being advocates for organ donor registration and transplantation, that we need to learn more, and that this was one way that we sort of learn more. But it's really interesting. There's people that are way more knowledgeable about this than we are.
Well, we get tours of hospitals and all kinds of places. We go in public, like in person to wherever, and we wanted to know more. We wanted to know more what people are talking about, so we actually could engage in. So we thought we'd put our toe in the water, and it seemed harmless enough for both teachers. Can be. So it was interesting enough, but we had our, it's kind of like you think this is the way it's supposed to be, how the donor family is supposed to operate, and they think, but you're not thinking like a scientist thinks, or an administrator of a hospital thinks, or an administrator of a procurement program thinks, or how the other family in the group thinks. It's all different thinking, and I found that very surprising. I thought, well, this is the answer. Let's just do this, and it's like, so all these things come into play, which is no different than in my classrooms I taught in, but I was in charge, so it's a little bit different. In this way, I was not in charge. And and we developed questions as a group that I thought were excellent research questions. And they are. It's just the matter of, it was good. It was really good. I'm glad we were participating, and we'll probably do more of it, but we'll be a little more careful which groups we choose into. We'll make sure they have a deadline when it ends.
Well,
it's a process. It's a process. And the other thing that you can do is you can change, by your lived experience, you can change the way the donor families are approached and how things are done. And that's where the impact is going to be. And so you're coming to it with a different perspective that those other people that you just mentioned don't see. And that's where the magic happens.
What we found is that 100%, but our donor perspective is very, very different, vastly different than the vast majority of Canadian angel donor families. The Boulets were under a media microscope, a national tragedy, a Logan Boulet effect. It just makes things different from what the other towns are like. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell you, because that's not what happened to us. That's not how they answered our questions. So it's just, and each hospital, each procurement person in each hospital, they're all different that day. It was interesting.
Yeah, and the whole purpose of this, what we were working with the ATI, was the fact that they had several different groups that were meeting, and each group was trying to come up with 3 possible research questions, which then would be presented to a board, and they would make a decision on what future research projects were going to be on. So it was really interesting in that, and then to see what other groups had decided, and oh wait, this topic should go into this group. And
it was fascinating. I'd like to do it again. I'm just joking about it. I'm prepared to go. I'm not sure they will ask me. You might ask Brendan, they're gonna ask me again. But
they'll ask you with your teacher background, your experience. Well, that comes to the end because we could go on forever, and
And a day.
but we're
Go
going.
on forever and a day.
Yeah, we'll save for another time to talk about media and how you you manage that, but we'll save that for another time. So I really want to thank you for everything that you've done for organ and tissue donation. I want to let you know that you are donor angels as well, because the fact that you went through the grief of losing a son, which never goes away, a child never goes away, but the fact that you've been able to turn the tragedy into a major impact, as I said, I've never seen before, where you're saving lives. And for people like myself who don't know my donor family, but want to give a hug, seeing people like you and knowing what you did, it's just amazing. So on behalf of all recipients who are out there and all donor families and others, thank you so much for all that you do. All the best for Green Shirt Day. It's just going to get bigger and better. And the Logan Boulet effect is going to continue. So thank you so much to you both. I look forward to seeing you sometime again in person and continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sandra. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for having us today.
Yeah.